Let me make a confession to you, one you may never have heard before, one that, deep down, even you have wondered about, asking yourself, could it have been different? We always thought of the T-Rex as a solved puzzle, a mystery whose story had already reached its end. That massive head, those tiny arms so small against its body, those teeth, oversized for its jaw, sharper than a crocodile's, curved like blades. We acted as if knowing this meant we knew everything about the T-Rex, as if this was enough. We drew it in the same stance, the same pose in every school book. We showed it with the same roar in every film. In documentaries, we told the same story over and over again. For almost a century, we watched the same silhouette, the same walk, the same monster, again and again. But in the last few years, we have pulled so many knowledge-rich bones from beneath the earth that they forced us to redraw nearly this entire picture. In the mid-1990s, in Montana's Hell Creek region, on land a farmer was sowing for himself, two skeletons were found, locked together. One was a Triceratops, the other, a predator far smaller than a T-Rex. For years, we thought this small predator was actually a young T-Rex, one that simply hadn't grown up yet. Just an immature Tyrannosaurus, we said, and moved on. Turns out, we were wrong. And this single mistake would go on to question almost everything we thought we knew about the T-Rex. And it would knock on the door of research all over again. So who was the T-Rex really? How fast did it run? Did its teeth jut out past its mouth? Was it feathered? Or did it have scales like deep armor? Did it chase its prey or feed on carrion? Were those tiny arms really useless? Did it even eat its own kind? In this video, I will tell you step by step about the discoveries scientists have made about the T-Rex in recent years. Discoveries I have witnessed some of firsthand. Discoveries that turn everything upside down. If you're ready, let's begin. Why is the T-Rex so important to all of this? Before we move on to that, I know some of you out there are researchers or people fascinated by these ancient giant monsters. My channel is still quite new, and I'm hoping for a little support from you. Don't worry, I'm not asking for money. I only ask that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Believe me, what you'll learn from this channel you've never heard from any researcher before, because these are both the filed and documented records of the research and my own discoveries. Please don't take this small request lightly, and don't underestimate what it means to subscribe. We achieve great things by taking small steps. Let's carry on. The Tyrannosaurus Rex. Probably the largest land creature this planet has ever seen. When you say dinosaur, it's the first to come to mind. Search for the biggest dinosaur, and it's the first to appear. It's always there, on the cover of children's books. But how strange it is that the creature we thought we knew best was actually one of the most misunderstood in the entire history of paleontology. There's a history behind this, actually. When the T-Rex was first introduced to the scientific world in 1905, artists who had never seen it created an idea from bones that had never truly been examined. A single giant standing upright, dragging its tail along the ground like a lizard. Then this image stayed unchanged for decades because no one ever questioned why it was so. In the 1990s, computer modeling and biomechanics showed that it was actually a horizontal-postured, agile hunter with its tail held high in the air. In this historic moment, that was the first correction. And now, here we are, 30 years later. And the second great wave of correction is coming. There's a reason for this. The T-Rex lived only 65 million years ago, right before the extinction of the dinosaurs. In other words, it stood on the very last page of the Cretaceous period, right in the middle of the stage. The skeletons it left behind are better preserved than those of many other dinosaurs. So far, more than 50 significant T-Rex fossils have been found worldwide. This abundance, strangely enough, led us astray. Because as the number of fossils grew, scientists found the chance to retest the things they once thought were certain. And the more they tested, the more the cracks in the old story began to show. What I'm going to talk about in this video isn't just saying, so this is what the T-Rex was really like, and we learned it wrong all this time. What we're really going to talk about is how science corrects itself, how a legend crumbles piece by piece over the years. From its identity crisis to its skin, from its hunting habits to its senses, from those famously tiny arms to its wounds, every single part of the T-Rex has been rewritten in recent years. And believe me, I've saved the most striking part for last. So what's the fastest, the easiest way to understand this change? To start from the very beginning, from the T-Rex's identity. Because, as it turns out, some of those young T-Rex skeletons we've seen in museums for decades were never T-Rex at all. Part 1. The Twin Battle. The Nanotyrannus Truth. Let's return to those two skeletons I mentioned at the start. This fossil, named the Dueling Dinosaurs, became one of the most debated finds in the scientific world, one written about again and again. A Triceratops and a small Tyrannosaurus, frozen as if, in their final moments, they had locked together and clung to one another. One had swung its horns, the other had sunk in its teeth, and both were buried beneath the earth at the very same instant. For years, the identity of this small predator was debated. Was it a T-Rex cub that hadn't grown up yet? Or was it an entirely different breed, an entirely different species? And here's where things get very strange. A comprehensive study published in 2025 re-examined this fossil, along with more than 200 other Tyrannosaurus remains, several times over. The researchers looked at the growth rings, the fusion of the spine, the throat bones, and the developmental anatomy, and they investigated in great detail. The result was astonishing. This little T-Rex was about 20 years old when it died, and a fully mature individual. In other words, its growth was finished. It would never grow again. And this meant it could not be a T-Rex cub, because T-Rex never reached this size this early. Scientists named this species Nanotyrannus lancensis, and they even discovered a second, previously unnoticed species, Nanotyrannus lethius. The evidence was perfectly clear. Larger forelimbs, more teeth, fewer tail vertebrae, and a skull nerve structure completely different from that of the T-Rex. These features developed early in life, and in no way did they fit the growth process of a T-Rex. So why is this so important? Because for decades, many fossils displayed in museums as young T-Rex, shown in textbooks as the growth stages of the T-Rex, actually belonged to a species that was never a T-Rex at all. Just think about it. A significant portion of the calculations we made about how fast the T-Rex grew were done with bones belonging to the wrong species. This isn't just a change of name. This means the entire growth story of the T-Rex has to be rewritten. And it means that in the final days of the Cretaceous, there was a far more crowded, far more diverse predator ecosystem than we ever imagined. But there's one more detail in this fossil's story, perhaps as striking as the scientific finding itself. After the Dueling Dinosaurs fossil was found, for 14 full years, not a single scientist could touch it. The fossil had been found on private land, and the question of who owned these two skeletons beneath the earth turned into a long legal battle. The case was carried all the way to the Montana Supreme Court. The court had to decide whether the fossils were legally a mineral or a part of the land. One of the fossils the scientific world was most curious about waited for years in a warehouse, in a vault no one could examine. But when the case was resolved and the fossil reached a museum, scientists could finally study it and reached that groundbreaking conclusion I just described. Think about this. Perhaps the greatest truth about the T-Rex waited for 14 years under lock and key in a vault no one could see. And here's what was truly striking. If we had mixed up the very identity of the most studied dinosaur of all for all these years, then shouldn't we question everything that remains all over again? The answer was yes, because now it was the turn of the T-Rex's skin and its face. Please, to see the new videos and learn all the truths about the T-Rex, subscribe and like the videos. This part ends here, but before long, the second and most gripping video about the T-Rex will be out. Stay tuned.